I was a ghost in my own life. I wore gray clothes. I spoke in a whisper. I walked with my head down so I wouldn't make eye contact with anyone. My name is Abigail. I was 26 years old, and I worked at the Golden Whisk, the most famous bakery in the city. But nobody knew who I was. I was the back-of-house decorator. I spent my days in the hot windowless kitchen, creating magic with sugar and flour. I made roses that looked real enough to smell. I painted landscapes on wedding cakes. But out in the front, in the bright, air-conditioned showroom, was Vanessa. Vanessa was beautiful. She had shiny blonde hair and a loud, confident laugh. She was the head sales manager. Every time a customer gasped at a cake I made, Vanessa was there to take the smile. "Oh, thank you," she would say, flipping her hair. "I wanted to try something different with the icing today. It took me hours." She never touched a piping bag in her life. She couldn't bake a cookie if her life depended on it. But she was excellent at selling herself. I never corrected her. I was too insecure. I thought, who would listen to me? I am just the quiet girl with flour on her apron. Vanessa is the star. One rainy Tuesday, the bakery door opened. A woman in dark sunglasses walked in. She was followed by 2 assistants. It was Elena Vance, the famous fashion designer. She was known for being impossible to please. The bakery went silent. Vanessa rushed forward. "Ms. Vance, what an honor. How can I help you?" Elena took off her sunglasses. She looked at the display case. She looked at the cookies. She looked bored. "I need a cake," Elena said coldly. "For my brand launch party on Friday. It needs to be spectacular. It needs to look like fabric, silk and velvet. Can you do it?" Vanessa didn't hesitate. "Of course. I am an expert at texture. Leave it to me." Elena narrowed her eyes. "If it is not perfect, I will destroy your reputation on social media. I have 5 million followers." "It will be my masterpiece," Vanessa promised. Elena left. Vanessa walked into the kitchen, where I was washing bowls. Her smile dropped instantly. "Abigail," she snapped. "Did you hear that?" "Yes," I whispered. "Good," she said, checking her makeup in the reflection of the oven. "You need to make a cake that looks like silk, and it needs to be ready by Friday morning. Don't mess it up, or you're fired." "But I've never done fabric texture before," I stammered. "It's very difficult." Vanessa leaned in close. She smelled of expensive perfume and intimidation. "Figure it out, Mouse," she said. "My reputation is on the line, and if I go down, I'm taking you with me." She walked out, leaving me alone with my fear. I looked at my shaking hands. I had 3 days to do the impossible, and I knew that if I succeeded, I would get 0 credit. But if I failed, I would lose everything. For the next 3 days, I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I lived in the bakery kitchen. I threw away 10 batches of fondant. Too thick. Too stiff. It didn't look like silk. It looked like Play-Doh. I cried over the mixing bowl. I wanted to give up. I heard Vanessa's voice in my head. "Figure it out, Mouse." But then I remembered my grandmother. She was a seamstress. She taught me how fabric moves, how it folds and catches the light. "Don't force it," she used to say. "Let it flow." I changed my technique. I rolled the sugar paste until it was as thin as paper. I used a special brush to paint it with cocoa butter to look like velvet. By Friday morning, it was done. It wasn't just a cake. It was a sculpture. It looked like a pile of dark red velvet and silver silk, draped over a hidden structure. It looked so soft you wanted to touch it. Vanessa walked into the kitchen at 8:10 a.m. She stopped. Her mouth opened. For a second, I saw fear in her eyes. It was too good. It was better than anything she could ever pretend to make. "It's fine," she said quickly, recovering her composure. It will do. She clapped her hands at the delivery drivers. Load it up. Carefully. This is my creation. Wait, I said, pointing to a small silver box on the counter. Vanessa, you need the finishing spray. The velvet texture is fragile. If the room is humid, it will melt. You have to spray it right before you serve it. Vanessa grabbed the box without looking at me. I know how to do my job, Abigail. Go clean the floors. You look like a mess. She swept out of the room. The truck drove away. I was left alone in the silent kitchen. I was covered in flour. My eyes were burning from exhaustion. I had created a masterpiece, and I felt hollow. I started scrubbing the floor. 2 hours later, my phone pinged. It was a notification from Instagram. Alina Vance brand launch. Live now. I couldn't help myself. I sat on a bucket and opened the video. The party was glamorous. There were chandeliers and celebrities. Alina Vance was standing on a stage holding a microphone. Beside her was a table covered in a white sheet. And now, Elena announced, her voice echoing, the centerpiece of our evening, a cake that represents the elegance of my new collection, created by the talented Vanessa from the Golden Whisk. The sheet was pulled back. The crowd gasped. The cake shimmered under the lights. It was perfect. Vanessa walked onto the stage. She was wearing a stunning dress. She waved to the crowd. Thank you. Vanessa beamed. It was a labor of love. I spent nights hand sculpting every fold. My heart squeezed. Liar. It is exquisite, Elena said, looking closely at the cake. She picked up a microphone. I have a question, Vanessa. The texture, it catches the light in a very specific way. It reminds me of the bias cut technique I use in my dresses. How did you achieve that diagonal drape with sugar? It was a technical question. A specific question. I held my breath. Vanessa froze. Her smile stayed, but her eyes panicked. She didn't know what a bias cut was. She didn't know I had used a pasta roller to stretch the fondant diagonally. Oh, Vanessa laughed nervously. Well, you know, lots of sugar. And, rolling pins. It's a secret family recipe. Elena didn't smile. She looked at Vanessa with sharp, intelligent eyes. She knew fluff when she heard it. A secret? Elena asked dryly. Interesting. Just then, disaster struck. On the screen, I saw a small piece of the red velvet fondant start to droop. The humidity in the ballroom was too high. The texture was failing. I screamed at my phone. The spray! Use the spray, Vanessa! But Vanessa didn't notice. She was too busy waving. Another piece drooped. A murmur went through the crowd. Elena said, pointing at the cake. Is it supposed to be melting? Vanessa turned around. She shrieked. The beautiful drapes were sliding off the cake like wet laundry. Oh no, Vanessa cried. She grabbed a napkin and tried to stick the fondant back on. It made it worse. Her thumb poked a hole in the cake. Stop, Elena shouted. You are ruining it. It's the humidity, Vanessa wailed. It's not my fault. I couldn't watch anymore. I stood up. The Golden Whisk was only 4 blocks away from the hotel. I looked at my dirty apron. I looked at my messy hair. Stay here, Abigail, a voice said. It's not your problem. Let her fail. But it was my cake. It was my art. I couldn't let it die. I grabbed my emergency kit, my tools, my extra glue, and the heavy-duty setting spray that Vanessa had left behind in her rush. I ran out the door. I ran down the street. People stared at the crazy girl covered in flour running like an Olympian. I burst into the hotel lobby. Security tried to stop me. I'm with the cake, I yelled, waving a spatula like a weapon. Let me through! I pushed open the heavy doors to the ballroom. It was silent inside. Vanessa was standing by the ruined cake, crying. Elena looked furious. The guests looked awkward. I can fix it, I shouted. Every head in the room turned to look at me. The silence in the ballroom was deafening. I stood there, panting, my hair wild, my apron stained with white flour and dark chocolate. I looked like a disaster in a room full of diamonds. Vanessa's eyes went wide with horror. She stepped in front of the cake, trying to hide me. "Security!" she screeched. "Get her out! This is my dishwasher! She is crazy!" 2 large guards started walking toward me. I gripped my toolkit tight. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but looking at my melting masterpiece gave me a strange, cold courage. "I am not a dishwasher," I said. My voice shook, but it was loud enough. "And if you don't let me touch that cake in the next 30 seconds, the entire bottom tier will collapse." Elena Vance held up a hand. The guards stopped. Elena looked at Vanessa, who was sweating and frantic. Then she looked at me, the messy girl with the fire in her eyes. "Let her through," Elena said quietly. "But Ms. Vance," Vanessa protested, "she will ruin it." "It is already ruined, Vanessa," Elena snapped. She turned to me. "You have 5 minutes." I didn't waste a second. I rushed to the table. I ignored the crowd. I ignored the whispers. "Who is she? Is this part of the show?" I entered my zone. The world shrank down to just me and the sugar. I pulled out the setting spray. Psst. Psst. I coated the drooping fondant, freezing it in place. I pulled out my sculpting tools. My hands, usually shaking with insecurity, became steady and surgical. I didn't try to force the melting folds back up. That would look messy. Instead, I used my knife to cut them, reshaping the disaster into a new design. I made it look like the fabric was intentionally pooling on the floor, like a luxurious dress dropped after a long night. I worked fast. My fingers danced. I wasn't Abigail the mouse anymore. I was the conductor of a symphony. I tucked the edges. I dusted the new folds with silver powder to hide the cracks. In 4 minutes, the cake was transformed. It didn't look like a standard tiered cake anymore. It looked like a modern art installation. It was dramatic, emotional, and flawed in a beautiful way. I stepped back. I wiped my hands on my apron. "It is stable," I said breathlessly. The room was silent. Then, Elena Vance walked up to the table. She walked around the cake slowly. She leaned in close. She looked at the new folds I had created. "The bias cut," she murmured. "You cut it against the grain to make it drape. Just like real silk." She turned to face me. Her sunglasses were off. Her eyes were piercing. "Earlier," Elena said, her voice carrying through the microphone, "I asked Vanessa how she achieved this texture. She told me it was a secret family recipe involving rolling pins." Elena looked at Vanessa. Vanessa was shrinking against the wall, looking for an exit. Then Elena looked at me. "Tell me, young lady," Elena said. "How did you really do it?" I swallowed hard. Everyone was looking at me. The fear tried to crawl back up my throat. "Be quiet, Abigail. Go back to the shadows." But then I looked at the cake. My cake. "I used a pasta roller," I said clearly. "I rolled the fondant until it was translucent. Then I textured it with a clean piece of denim to give it the weave, and painted it with cocoa butter for the sheen." A murmur went through the crowd. It was the answer of an expert. Elena smiled. It was a terrifying, beautiful smile. "I see," she said. She walked over to Vanessa. The click of her heels sounded like gunshots. "Vanessa," Elena said smoothly, "show me your hands." "What?" Vanessa squeaked. "Your hands," Elena repeated. "Show them to the room." Vanessa slowly lifted her hands. They were perfectly manicured. Her nails were long and pink. Her skin was soft and clean. "Lovely," Elena said. Then she turned to me. "Now you, show us your hands." I lifted my hands. They were stained with red food coloring. There was dried sugar under my fingernails. There was a small burn mark on my thumb from the oven. They were rough, working hands. Elena took my hand and held it up high. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elena announced, "there are people who sell art, and there are people who bleed for it. I think we all know who really made this cake." She looked at me. "What is your name?" I stood tall. For the first time in 26 years, I didn't want to hide. "My name is Abigail," I said. The room erupted in applause. It wasn't polite applause. It was loud, genuine cheering. People love a Cinderella story, especially when Cinderella is covered in flour and holding a spatula. Vanessa stood there, her face a mask of shock. She looked at the cheering crowd, then she looked at Elena. "But she is just an employee," Vanessa stammered. "I managed the project. I directed her." Elena turned to Vanessa. Her expression was like ice. "Vanessa," Elena said, "you sold me a lie. In my industry, if you sell a fake, you are finished." Elena turned to her assistant. "Cancel my contract with the Golden Whisk, immediately." "Wait!" Vanessa cried. "You can't do that. Think of the exposure." "I am thinking of the art," Elena said. She turned her back on Vanessa. "Please leave. You are blocking the view of the artist." Vanessa looked around. She saw the photographers taking pictures of me, not her. She saw the waiter smirking. With a huff of humiliation, she gathered her skirt and ran out of the ballroom. I stood there feeling lightheaded. Elena looked at me. "Go home, Abigail," she said gently. "Take a shower. Sleep. But the cake," I pointed to the table. "The cake is perfect," Elena said, "and tomorrow my assistant will call you, not your boss, you." The next morning, I walked into the Golden Whisk. The owner, Mr. Henderson, was waiting. He looked pale. He had lost his biggest client, and Vanessa had quit in a rage that morning. When he saw me, his eyes lit up. "Abigail," he shouted. "My star! I saw the news. You are a hero. Listen, I am going to promote you. You can be the new head manager. I'll give you a 5% raise." I looked at the kitchen. It was dark and hot. I looked at the front counter where Vanessa used to stand. I realized something. I didn't want to be the manager. And I didn't want a 5% raise to stay in the shadows of a place that didn't respect me. I took off my apron. I folded it neatly on the counter. "No, thank you, Mr. Henderson," I said. "What?" He was shocked. "But where will you go? You need this job. You are—" "I am Abigail," I smiled. "And I have a meeting with Elena Vance. That was 2 years ago. Today I have my own bakery. It is called the Velvet Crumb. It is a small place, but there is a line out the door every morning. We are famous for our textured cakes. Elena Vance ordered the cake for her wedding from me. That photo was on the cover of Vogue. But the best part isn't the fame. Last week I hired a new girl. Her name is Lucy. She is 19. She wears big glasses, looks at her feet when she talks, and is terrified of making a mistake. Yesterday she made a tray of macarons. They were perfect, smooth, shiny, and delicious. A customer came in and said, "Wow, Abigail, these are amazing. Did you make them?" I looked at Lucy. She was hiding behind the espresso machine, shrinking away. I walked over. I took Lucy by the hand and pulled her to the front. "No," I told the customer loud and clear. "I didn't make them. This is Lucy. She is the artist." Lucy's face turned red, but for the first time she smiled. She stood a little taller. "My name is Abigail. I lived with Insecurity for a long time, but I learned that your talent is a light. You can try to hide it under a basket, but eventually it will burn through. Don't wait for someone to give you permission to shine. Show them your hands, show them your work, and tell them your name." If this story about overcoming insecurity, taking credit for your hard work, and finding your voice inspired you, please give this video a like. Have you ever felt like someone else was taking credit for your work? Tell us your story in the comments below. For more emotional English stories about self-discovery and success, please be sure to follow our channel.